What if I told you that XRP could one day hit $943 a coin? It sounds insane, right? Well, I thought so too, until I stumbled on a clue from Ripple's CEO and fell down a bit of a rabbit hole that completely changed my perspective. So, the other night I'm scrolling through crypto Twitter half asleep when I see this tweet about XRP potentially reaching $943. My immediate reaction was, alright, who's spiked the hopium? Now, I've been around long enough to roll my eyes at outrageous price calls. But this one was slightly different. It wasn't just some random moon boy shouting into the void. It actually traced back to a pretty bold hint from Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple himself. So that kind of got my attention. So if the guy steering the XRP ship is floating around such a scenario, even hypothetically, then I had to know more. Could XRP really have that kind of rocket fuel in its tank? Or is this just another crypto urban legend? There was only one way to find out. I had to jump headfirst into every thread, every article, and every number that I could find on this $943 prediction. And trust me here, what I discovered on the way was nothing short of eye-opening. By the end of this story, you might actually just find yourself as surprised as I was, or at least entertained by how wild the ride can get. Let's start with the obvious. $943 for a single XRP coin. At least from under $3 that it is today, that's over a 300x gain. So if you're like me, your skeptical kind of antenna goes up, way up actually hearing all of that. Now, I mean, how many times have we heard this coin's gonna 100x, bro? Only to kind of watch it do the exact opposite. So yeah, I came in with a healthy dose of skepticism. But I'm also an XRP holder, and I'm curious at that, right? So I just kept on digging. So here is the backstory. Now, a few months ago, Brad Garlinghouse, yes, the Brad Garlinghouse who runs Ripple, apparently suggested in an interview, or maybe it was at a conference, that in the next 5 years, XRP could capture up to 14% of Swift's global payment flows. Now, Swift is basically the network that banks use to move money internationally, the legacy system. And it moves a mind-boggling amount of money, about $1.5 quadrillion a year in transactions. By some estimates, you can pause on that number for a second if you need to, 1.5 quadrillion. That is 1.5 or 1,500 trillion dollars, right? It's almost hard to kind of imagine, like nearly 8 times the entire US economy's annual GDP. Yeah, it's kind of huge. So 14% of $1.5 quadrillion. If that much value flowed through XRP in a single year, well, we're talking about $210 trillion moving on the XRP Ledger. $210 trillion. Now, I don't care who you are, that number is outrageous. Yet, here I am thinking, okay, Brad, I'll bite what happens if XRP really did handle that kind of mere 14% of global bank traffic. Enter an XRP community analyst named Diana, or Invest with D, as she is known online. Now, she took Brad's hypothetical and ran with it, crunching the numbers to see what XRP's price might look like in that particular scenario. And this is kind of where things go from big to absolutely bonkers. Now, according to Diana's math, if XRP captured just that 14% of Swift's payments, again, roughly $210 trillion in value, and you consider that the effective supply of XRP is around 5.6 billion, meaning the truly kind of available float that's out there, excluding what's kind of locked up or out of circulation, well, the price per XRP could theoretically shoot up to around $943. Yes, you heard that right. About $943 per coin. Now, I had to blink and make sure that I didn't accidentally put a decimal in the wrong place, because that is a 314x increase from XRP's current price, around $3 at the point of recording. So to kind of put that into everyday terms, imagine that you have 2,000 XRP tucked away, worth, maybe around $6,000 today. Now if, and it's a colossal if, XRP hits $943, well, that little stash would basically suddenly be worth about $1.8 million. You're millionaire territory, right? All from a few thousand XRP or a few $1,000 of XRP. Right? It sounds like one of those kind of late night infomercials. One weird trick to turn $6K into $1.8 million. Right. Now, before we go any further, let me hit pause for just a second, because I've got to do the responsible thing here. Now, this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, that's the disclaimer done. We had to get it out of the way because talk of million-dollar gains can make anyone a little bit kind of starry-eyed. Now, I'm over here trying to keep at least one foot on the ground. So, what's the real deal? Is this $943 XRP scenario completely delusional? Or are there actually some kind of method, or is there a method to all of this madness? Well, let me unpack it just a little bit more, because there are some layers here. Now, the whole idea hinges on XRP becoming a sort of backbone for significant chunks of the global financial plumbing. Now, we're not talking about just kind of retail crypto trading or a niche market. This is the big league stuff. Interbank settlements, cross-border transfers, maybe even central bank digital currencies, CBDCs plugging in, and tokenized assets being moved around as well. And funny enough, all of those things, CBDCs, real-world asset tokenization, stablecoins, even crypto ETFs, are exploding right now in terms of development and adoption. So for the first time, these grand ideas are actually being piloted or even rolled out. So the timing of this rather bold XRP projection ties into a much broader trend. The real money might finally actually be ready to flow on-chain. Diana suggests that XRP could benefit from a perfect storm of liquidity. Let's think of it this way. If a tsunami of institutional money is coming into blockchain networks, XRP wants to be the ocean that actually carries it. Ripple, the company, has been positioning XRP as a bridge currency for many years, focusing largely on cross-border payments. But now they're also dipping their toes into other massive pools of value. Here are some crazy connections and numbers that popped up in my research. And this is kind of where I felt like one of those conspiracy meme guys with the tangled web of yarn on a bulletin board, except it's all high finance references. The DTCC, that's the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, basically the backbone of US stock market settlements. Now they handle around $3 quadrillion in transactions per year. Now Ripple happened to acquire a stake in a company called Hidden Road, which gives them a foot in the door. So, in theory, the XRP Ledger could end up touching a slice of the stock settlement world too. Global banks, US and Japan, between those regions, banks hold about $37.5 trillion in deposits. Ripple has partnered with big players like Bank of New York Mellon in the United States and SBI in Japan. Now, if even a portion of those deposits or interbank transfers start moving through Ripple's network, well, that's a massive use case. Credit card giants Visa and MasterCard, American Express, together, they actually handle around $26 trillion in annual payment volume. Now, these companies are exploring blockchain tech for faster settlements. Visa has made moves with stablecoin pilots, and it's not even crazy to imagine some of the kind of swipe card money settling via a token like XRP in the future, especially if Ripple's tech is involved behind the scenes. Tokenization markets, and then there's the whole trend of tokenizing real-world assets like stocks, real estate, commodities. Now, that market could reach trillions in values in the coming decade. Now, Ripple has shown interest here too. They want XRP to be the highway of all of these tokenized values to travel globally within seconds. Now, you add up all of those and you see the picture here. This $943 scenario, it isn't just about one stream like Swift. It's actually many rivers converging. It's like Ripple's trying to connect XRP to all of the money. Cue the XRP community's favorite meme, all the money. To die-hard XRP supporters, this isn't a pipe dream, but actually the master plan. They're basically saying, look, right, we don't need XRP to replace the dollar or to become the one world currency or any of the sci-fi stuff. We just need it to be the neutral bridge that a decent chunk of the big institutions use behind the scenes. Even a single-digit percentage of global finance and boom. Boom indeed, right? If that ever happened, right? Even just a 1% capture of global flows, estimated around $530 trillion annually, could, by Diana's calculations, put XRP near $96. And $96 per XRP from just $3 is already a life-changing 30x gain. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, $96, I can wrap my head around that. That alone would be pretty incredible. And as an XRP holder, I wouldn't complain one bit at $96. I'll tell you that. But $943, that's the ambitious case where a combination of factors, high demand from institutions, relatively limited effective supply, creates a kind of liquidity squeeze, blasting the price into the triple digits. Boom or not, after kind of marinating in all of these numbers for a while, I had a little bit of a moment. I glanced at my XRP bags and I actually kind of caught myself daydreaming. If this even has a 1% chance of coming true, then I want to be strapped in for it. Suddenly, those kind of fanciful kind of predictions, they didn't seem so 100% laughable anymore. I found myself actually hopeful. And it kind of felt weird because I'm usually neutral and naturally a bit of a cautious guy. So it's a classic kind of battle of greed versus logic that every investor knows all too well. My logical brain is screaming at me, this is just too good to be true, while my imagination is whispering, but what if it isn't? Just imagine the possibilities. Now, speaking of imagination, I even started to think practical, like how would one even cash out if XRP went that high? Would exchanges even cope with that kind of volume? So I could just picture myself frantically logging into my Blowfin crypto exchange account. The link, by the way, in the description is an affiliate link that supports the channel here. If you do happen to sign up and trade using it, it costs you nothing extra, but really does support the channel. So thanks in advance. Because, if something like this even happened or started to happen, things would get pretty wild pretty fast, right? Maybe I would be having to spread some XRP across different kind of platforms like BitGet, for instance. And yes, there's also an affiliate link for BitGet down there too, which supports the channel also. Anyway, if this rocket ship actually does take off, then I want to make sure that I have a few exit ramps planned out. So the links in the description down below actually takes you to our website where there's actually about I think 10 different exchanges that I all kind of have accounts with so that I can spread my bets. And it's good to have exit ramps, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's the kind of wild scenario where you kind of start planning all of these kind of things. What if I wake up and XRP is hundreds of dollars? Contingency plans are very important, even if they are just for this hypothetical fun, of course. Now, let me kind of bring this back to reality for a second, because it's easy to kind of get carried away. Will XRP actually manage to pull all of this off? Well, that is the trillion or quadrillion dollar question, right? Not everyone is buying into it, right? A lot of people outside of XRP, or at least the XRP faithful, actually think this is just pure fantasy. Now, I actually saw plenty of people mocking responses online. One person flat out commented, lol, what is this BS? Ouch, right? Even within the broader crypto community, XRP has always had this kind of mixed reputation. Right? There are the true believers. Some might even say kind of, crazies, who will hodl till kingdom come. And then there are those others who basically think XRP is never going to do much above its previous high. They cite its huge supply, or that they just don't trust Ripple, or whatever. So trust me here, there's no consensus here. Skeptics argue that these lofty projections ignore some real-world kind of constraints, regulatory hurdles like, will governments even allow this? Competition from other payment cryptos or even CBDCs, or the simple fact that banks might prefer to use their own controlled networks over public tokens like XRP. And hey, those are all rather valid points. Plus, let's also be real, $56 trillion with a T is what XRP's market cap would be to hit kind of, $943 price tag. Now, $56 trillion would make XRP the single most valuable asset on planet Earth, way beyond even gold's market cap. So to kind of think of any crypto that could achieve that in just a few years, it does feel a bit like science fiction. But, and I'm going to pause right here, it's important to understand that market caps are actually quite misleading, and you do need to understand the calculation, because in crypto, market cap isn't driven in the same way that you see things like in the stock market. It's actually just a basic calculation of the last traded price multiplied by the supply, which means you have to focus on, okay, the supply metrics for sure, but also what's driving the price, because price is driven from speculative investors, believers, hype drivers, but it's also kind of a reflection of that supply. So if there's a reason that supply shrinks and demand stays neutral or even increases, then actually the price will dictate what the market cap is. So market cap isn't really a barrier, it's just a result of the price action, and the price action is driven from the supply and the demand. Understanding the calculation as a retail investor really helps you understand why XRP does have the potential to really kind of make a lot of these skeptics eat humble pie at some point in the future. After all, no one in the early days thought Bitcoin was going to reach the market cap values that it sees today. I'll also note here that the crypto space has seen plenty of wild predictions that never also materialized. Bitcoin to $1 million, right? It has the potential, but we're not there yet. Ethereum to 100K, mental and bonkers in my opinion, but you never know. XRP to $10,000, people threw those numbers out there all of the time. Most of them end up just being more kind of hype than actual reality, or at least in the kind of predicted timeframes, because it's always a problem with the timeframe. So you're not wrong to kind of raise an eyebrow at $943 XRP. I do too, believe me. But here is the thing. I keep coming back to that little nugget, Ripple's CEO. This whole idea wasn't born on some kind of random forum, was it? It was actually seeded by Brad Garlinghouse himself. When I hear wild numbers from random YouTubers, I usually just smirk and move on with life. But Brad Garlinghouse isn't exactly known for spewing kind of hopium, is he? He's a pretty measured, suit and tie kind of guy. So when he casually kind of tossed out XRP could capture 14% of global flows in 5 years as a possibility, well, that actually does carry some pretty significant weight. It suggests that Ripple is seeing something behind closed doors, maybe ongoing talks with big institutions that gave him the confidence to even put that idea out there. Now, it's not a guarantee of anything, of course, and I'm sure that he wasn't promising $943 prices in 5 years on the record or anything like that. But it's also not a kind of baseless chatter claim anyway. Plus, as crazy as $943 sounds, think about how far crypto has come in the last decade. 10 years ago, the idea of banks settling real dollars over a public blockchain probably would have got you laughed out of the room, right? Well, now it's actually happening. And I still think that most banks are actually going to become crypto exchanges in the future. Right? Maybe major banks and even governments are exploring or using this tech. A single Bitcoin was worth maybe $100 then. Now we're seeing it as $60,000 Bitcoin or $100,000 Bitcoin, maybe even $250,000 Bitcoin. Right? Sometimes reality in crypto does indeed outpace our imaginations. So here is where I've landed after this whole deep dive adventure. I'm excited, but I'm also kind of cautiously optimistic, right? And heavy emphasis on the cautionary, right? Because I'm not out here kind of remortgaging my house to buy XRP because it's going to 300x, bro. Absolutely not going to happen, right? In fact, none of this tells me on me telling you to go ahead and buy anything, in fact, right? Remember the disclaimer that we spoke about earlier. This is speculation. This is not financial advice. But I am going to be keeping hold of, my XRP that I already have, and I'll be kind of paying closer or even closer attention to Ripple's next move in the coming few months, maybe even the moves over the next few years, right? I've set up alerts for any kind of news about big banks or payment networks actually using XRP, any kind of pilot programs, central bank deals, that kind of thing, right? Because those are the breadcrumbs indicating whether this wild theory is actually inching towards reality. And I have to say, right, it's been a blast letting myself kind of dream just a little bit here, right? Sometimes, amidst all of the noise and the volatility in crypto, entertaining a what-if scenario like this kind of reminds me why I got into the space, right? The potential for something huge. Even if 99% of the crazy predictions don't come true, the 1% that do can change the entire world, or at least change lives. Now, I've been chatting about this with friends in our free educational Discord server. The link is in the description. It's open to anyone. And opinions are a little bit all over the place here, right? Some think that I'm nuts for even giving this idea the time of day. Others are like, finally, you see the light. Welcome to the XRP army. Tongue in cheek, of course. It's a fun discussion, right? If nothing else, it kind of keeps us all pretty sharp, balancing dreams with, of course, due diligence. So after kind of following the $943 XRP rabbit trail as far as it could go, here is my take. Right? It's not impossible, but it is a bit of a moonshot. Right? It would require nothing less than a revolution in global finance with XRP at the core. Right? The pieces are actually kind of being put on the board now. Ripple is talking to central banks, big players and payment companies are experimenting with blockchain, and the world financial plumbing is slowly being upgraded here. Whether XRP ends up being the pipes and the valves of this new system at scale leads to those kind of triple-digit prices. We'll have to wait and see, of course. I remain hopeful because a little hope makes this journey a little bit more exciting. And hey, even if XRP only goes to, let's say, $10 or $50 in the next few years, that is still an amazing return from today's prices. You don't need $943 to change your life, right? But a part of me will be always kind of wonder, what if $943 is actually on the table eventually? Now, that little spark of wonder is what keeps me in crypto. Now, no matter what happens, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be watching, I'm going to be learning, and I'm going to be sharing with all of you guys what I find along the way, whether it's sobering reality checks or moonshot dreams like this one. If you've enjoyed coming down this rabbit hole with me, don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe for more crypto adventures, and I'll catch you all in the next one.